The origin of the Infinity Stones is perhaps one of the most closely guarded secrets in the MCU, and is currently one of the longest running unanswered questions to date. Though we have vague allusions to their existence and creation at the dawn of universe given in the Guardians of the Galaxy film, there are a few inconsistencies and lineage questions to take into account about the stones, in order to discover their true origins in the Marvel Universe. Both the Collector and Wong state that they were forged from the 6 singularities that existed before the universe began, but the Collector simply states that, quote, "The remnants of these systems were forged into concentrated ingots," though the Collector mysteriously never implies who they were forged by or if they were unintentional side effects of the creation, or if they served a larger purpose. So, stick with us today, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, and let's assess the possibility that the Infinity Stones were not accidentally created, but were deliberately forged by none other than the Celestials, and forged by the Celestials for a specific purpose, as well as what this purpose may have been. So, were the Infinity Stones made by the Celestials? We know that the Celestials have a history with the stones, as we see Eon the Searcher using the Power Stone to decimate an unnamed planet in the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, and there are hints to suggest that the Celestials were once in possession of another incredibly powerful stone, but more on that in just a moment. Likewise, the Eternals film confirmed that they existed before the Big Bang, when only the 6 singularities inhabited space, which would later come to be known as the modern universe, meaning and confirming of course that the Celestials were in fact around. We know that the Celestials not only have the power to harness the stones, but have created entire galaxies, and so it stands to reason that they were likely powerful enough to create the stones in the first place, or at least forge the singularities of the universe into the stones. So if the Celestials created the Infinity Stones, then what purpose may they have served for them? Why did the Celestials create the stones to begin with, and why don't they seem to care about them anymore? We believe we actually have the answers to all of these questions. The simplest answer ties into a Celestial's very purpose for existence, which is that the Infinity Stones were the most surefire way to develop life in a newly burgeoning universe and newly burgeoning galaxies around the universe. We know this thanks to a few key points in Avengers Endgame, as the Infinity Stones are not only able to reconstitute half of all known life forms in the universe, but are capable of restoring their souls, memories, and personalities in perfect working order. But there is actually even more evidence in Endgame. In addition to this, Thanos even stated his amended plan during the final conflict in Endgame, as Thanos specifically states that with the stones the Avengers have already collected, he will create a new universe teeming with life that will never know the story behind their true existence. This seems to imply that the stones are able to not only restore lost life, but they can quite literally create new life completely from scratch, which means that they would have been the perfect tools for early Celestials to use on their quest to create life across the galaxy and throughout the universe itself. We also know that at least one of the Infinity Stones was in possession of the Celestials at a point in time, but there is a heavy implication that one particular stone also belonged to the Celestials in the distant past. In Infinity War, the world Vormir is described as the center of celestial existence, and this is where the Soul Stone has been safeguarded for potentially thousands of years. If the Celestials used the stones to create life, then it stands to reason that the most integral stone in their possession would have been the Soul Stone. Hence, it's likely that the Soul Stone remained on Vormir after it served its ultimate purpose, giving living beings their souls. This might be why the Soul Stone is still on Vormir, and this was the last known use of all 6 Infinity Stones before the Celestials ultimately abandoned this methodology, and using the stones to construct life in a universe. Knowing this, alongside knowing the mission that the Celestials are currently pursuing in the MCU, it makes sense that they not only created the stones, but the deliberate purpose behind their conception was to create the first life forms from across the universe, and potentially even use the stones in the first rounds of their experimentation. The Infinity Stones are incredibly adept at altering the genomes of known life forms, granting an array of different powers and even awakening latent abilities from within silent mutants. This would have made them integral keys in the Celestial experiments. If the Celestials wanted to steer the evolutionary paths of different individuals, then the Infinity Stones would have been a highly effective way to do so. With this though, another Another question is raised: if the Infinity Stones were such vital parts in directing celestial experimentation, then why haven't the Celestials addressed the stones in the modern MCU? Why wasn't Arishem concerned with their whereabouts, and why were they simply left to be scattered across the galaxy without any concern on the Celestials' part? We know that contrary to popular belief, Celestials are not perfect individuals, and they themselves are prone to evolution. They have been known to grow and evolve just like any other life form, and it therefore stands to reason that their methods for creating galaxies and experimenting on life forms has evolved over the course of time as well. We know this simply because Arishem talks about his past mistakes and how he has developed as an individual, meaning of course that a Celestial is capable of making these mistakes. In the Eternals, Arishem talks about how the Deviants were the first iteration of the Eternals, but he sought to improve his designs until ultimately finally optimizing his creations, of course in the forms of the Eternals that we know today, where he previously had a rudimentary method of a population control. Now he has an optimized method that took time to develop properly, and first made a mistake with the Deviants, however, ultimately evolved into the Eternals. But this isn't the only example. Arishem also stored the memories of the Eternals from thousands of lifetimes with the intention of learning from them, studying the Deviants, and improving his next generation of designs. By this logic, it's entirely possible that his first method of creating life was also a rudimentary one, imperfect system that would later be improved upon and more thoroughly evolved into the modern celestial science. Meaning that although ultimately powerful, the Infinity Stones may have been deemed too powerful by the Celestials. If the Celestials were responsible for the Big Bang as their first attempt at creating life, then they might have also created necessary tools in order to assist them. This would also explain a few different key aspects, including why the genetic patterns of humans is so compatible with the Infinity Stones, and why they can be so easily influenced by the stones. It would also explain how the Celestials first began creating life, as well as why the Celestials haven't been concerned with the whereabouts of the Infinity Stones for several thousand years. As of now though in the MCU, the Infinity Stones are obsolete to beings like Arishem, who have perfected a new system, and they simply are not necessary to the modern celestial scientific methods. And it's likely that the Celestials found a better way, or perhaps deemed the Infinity Stones too dangerous even for celestial use, which is why the last use of an Infinity Stone by a Celestial was presumably thousands of years ago by the Great Searcher. But anyway, watchers, what do you think of this theory? Do you think it could have been the Celestials that created the Infinity Stones? Do you think they managed to harness the 6 singularities of the universe and bring them together in the form of these 6 stones, and then use these stones to create life? Or do you think the Celestials and the Infinity Stones are completely unrelated? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the channel. Smash that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and I hope that you have a great day.